Developed by Hangar 13 and published by 2K Games, Mafia 3 is 2K Games' third entry into the franchise, and it was a commercial success, selling over 4.5 million copies in its first week, dubbing it 2K's fastest selling game, and has sold over 7 million copies worldwide. Mafia 3 initially released on the PS4, Xbox One and Steam on the 7th of October 2016, then Steam for Mac on the 11th of May 2017, then remastered for the same 3 platforms in September of 2020 as part of the trilogy, and released on Stadia on the 1st of October 2021. As always, before I continue, please be advised there will be spoilers ahead. Without further ado, let's get into the badass lore behind Mafia 3. Set in the year 1968 in the city of New Bordeaux in the US, which is a reimagined version of New Orleans, in a time of white supremacy and extreme racism, we are introduced to the main protagonist, Vietnam War veteran Lincoln Clay, who's returned home to New Bordeaux. A Marine then comes up to him and says,
"Just because you're home doesn't mean you're back."
But then, his adoptive brother Ellis pulls up and apologizes for making him wait, but is shocked to see Lincoln's calm demeanor since before he left for the war. They head to Sammy's bar and Lincoln reunites with his surrogate father and black mob leader Sammy Robinson. He gives a speech in the bar to the people and reflects on almost not letting Lincoln go to make his mark, and gives him high praise. Lincoln goes to sleep and wakes up to find out Sammy is in some trouble with the Haitian mob. Then Father James walks in, who is Lincoln's friend, asking for Lincoln's help to supply the starving families in the city. Sammy encourages Lincoln and he agrees to help. Lincoln serves food to the people until the Haitians pull up to the diner and attempt to intimidate by letting a shot off, but they're no match for the Hulk that is Lincoln Clay. Lincoln finds a bag on one of the Haitian men and discovers some strange items inside, linking back to the Haitians. He confronts Sammy and he finally comes clean, going on to explain people in the town started getting robbed and they figured out it was the Haitians behind such activities. They even went as far as going after the lottery, which resulted in a lot of racked up debt to crime boss Sal Marcano, according to Ellis. They discuss solutions to get them out of the mess, when Sammy says he'll handle Sal since they go way back and he wants the boys to handle the Haitians. Before they go, Sammy tells the boys to never underestimate the capability of the Haitians. The pair head out to the bayou and arrive on a boat with one goal: find Barker. He takes out Barker's men until he's inevitably caught and has a shootout with the Haitians until he reaches the church and unloads on Barker. Lincoln snaps his neck and discovers he was holding a woman named Cassandra hostage. Lincoln calms her down, but she runs out. Haitian reinforcements rush the church and Lincoln fights his way to the front of the compound when Ellis finally shows up. They head back to Sammy's and tell him the good news until Sammy replies in regret for sending them to handle his business, but then Lincoln fires back with,
"This isn't any different than what I was doing before I left."
Sammy goes on to tell Lincoln about how he'd watch TV every night while eating dinner and waiting for Lincoln's name to come up among the list of soldiers killed in Vietnam, but thankfully it never did. The pair then discuss a solution to their troubles with Marcano when Sammy says he'll just pay him the damn money one way or another. However, Sammy mentions Sal called and wants Lincoln to meet at the country club, an opportunity to square things up. Lincoln expresses concern for entry since he's black, but Sammy says if Sal wants you there, the people gotta deal with it. Lincoln heads to the country club and is instantly disrespected by the security, but quickly changes his tune once Lincoln says he's got a meeting with Marcano. Lincoln heads in and runs into Sal's son Georgie. They catch up a little bit as old friends do, until Lincoln explains his presence at the country club. Georgie takes him to Sal and is introduced to the infamous Vittorio Antonio Scaletta. Vito and Lincoln begin bonding over them both serving in the war and earning medals before he excuses himself from the meeting. Sal begins running his mouth about Vito after he leaves and says he's been a pain since the commission sent him down to New Bordeaux from Empire Bay, but then Sal finally gets into the real reason Lincoln is there. The government has a schedule where they take old money out and burn it. That money is to be delivered to the reserve in town. Sal wants to hit the vault in the reserve to get that money, which is the type of heist Lincoln puts perfectly.
That's pretty fucking ballsy.
Sal changes the subject and talks about Sammy. Lincoln mentions the issues with the Haitians and that they've been handled. Sal is delighted to hear such information and gasses Lincoln up. However, Sal makes Lincoln a proposition. Sammy's getting old and Sal wants to make a change, and with that, he offers Lincoln the role of running the town. Lincoln immediately declines out of respect for Sammy until Sal attempts to convince Lincoln that Sammy will be more than fine after the bank heist. But Lincoln still refuses and explains he can't do it after everything Sammy has done for him. Sal expresses disappointment but praises his loyalty. The bank job is still on, however, and Sal gives his word that Sammy and all them won't have any problems after the heist. Lincoln heads to Burke's Iron and Metal where he meets his old friend Danny and his father Burke. The boys banter back and forth until Burke walks in and they discuss the plan for the heist, where they'll need a boat, and they manage to get their hands on a security truck thanks to Sal, along with uniforms, so it was time to go. Lincoln and Georgie get in the truck and head to the reserve, getting with no issue, with Lincoln of course receiving some racism. But they head down to the vault, and as they're burning the money, Lincoln takes out the guard and the guards in the other room before Georgie gets access to the vault with Lincoln opening it. They begin moving the money, but the alarm gets triggered, which sends reinforcements down to the vault, making Lincoln and Georgie hold off the guards while the other boys are drilling. They don't have the firepower to compete with the reinforcements until Lincoln gets access to the big boy gun. Lincoln continues to hold them off while Danny drills through the hole in the vault, but then the lights go out and Lincoln has to now take care of the reinforcements in the dark, with Georgie dropping the money down to the boys. Lincoln and Georgie are pinned down and call out to the boys for help, when Danny mentions TNT as a solution to bring them down. He detonates it and the explosion detaches the vault, dropping them down to the sewers. However, the explosion caused some damage and the rubble caused Danny to injure his leg. They escape the river on a speedboat and crash after jumping a ramp with the boat. With no way out, their only option is up. And with the Mardi Gras celebration happening, the crowd should make them inconspicuous enough. Lincoln picks up Danny because of his injured leg and they walk through the Mardi Gras celebration trying to be as less suspicious as they can while trying to find a payphone to contact Sammy. They find one, but Sammy can't get to them and mentions a grocery store nearby with the getaway car waiting. So with that, they make their way over until they cut through a bar and the news report starts playing to do with the heist the boys just pulled off, as well as describing the boat they used and the suspects involved in the heist. They reach an area where there's cops everywhere and realize they're screwed, so Lincoln tells the boys to take Danny and the money and get to the car while Lincoln deals with the cops. Georgie gives Lincoln a piece and he wastes no time attracting attention by shooting in the air. Lincoln has a shootout with some cops until he decides to make a run for it and gets to an area where cops are searching, so he sneaks his way out the cemetery and heads to the getaway car. They lose the cops and head back to Sammy's, learning they made
a little over $2 million per split.
Which means the debt to Sal is settled, right?
Possibly the baddest I ever laid my eyes on. She shouldn't have said no. Where the fuck you think you're going?
God was looking out for Lincoln that day, surviving a headshot like that. Luckily, Father James had planned to drop by Sammy's and save Lincoln while also seeing the wreckage of the place. We are now introduced to another main character of the story, CIA operative John Donovan, and a very good friend of Lincoln's where they met in the war. Lincoln begins his journey to recovery and starts laying the foundation of his plan of revenge, taking down the Marcano crime family empire with the help of Donovan. Father James believes he should just take out Sal and be done with it, but it's not even close to enough for Lincoln. He wants to make Sal feel what it's like to lose everything right in front of his eyes. Lincoln heads to Sammy's bar to grab his stuff and relives certain moments as he walks through. But while he grabs his stuff, he changes his appearance to show off the scar from the bullet. Lincoln meets Donovan at the hotel and gives Lincoln 3 possible assets to recruit, but Lincoln wants to take Delray Hollow back from whoever owns it until he learns the Haitians are still around and they aren't too happy about Sal giving Delray Hollow to the Dixie Mafia, which happened to be Georgie's idea with them running heroin through the town. With no identity on the new leader of the Haitians since Lincoln took out Barker, the only option is to tail the members and see if it leads him to the leader. Lincoln waits for the Haitians outside their warehouse and interrogates an informant where he gives the location of their boss. Lincoln heads to the location and waits until Cassandra walks in, and it's revealed she was the leader the whole time. Lincoln asks her for help to take down Marcano, and she responds a bit iffy until Lincoln explains that with the Dixie Mafia now in power, they'll stop at nothing to take her out. Cassandra goes on to explain a bit of the lore behind her and Sammy's feud. Basically, she wasn't a fan of Sammy only giving out food when he felt like it, and always listening to what Marcano said even if it put him against his own people. Lincoln and Cassandra begin negotiating terms and agreements, and then she drops the first target on Lincoln's path of revenge, Richie Doucette. She gives a vile description of how he treats the blacks and shares that's how her sister passed away. She reveals Richie moves around a lot due to the danger of the area, but his men operate out of the community church and an old theater that used to be called Perla's that was named after Sammy's wife. So now Lincoln goes after the first racket under Richie and speaks to Charles Laveau, or the Voice, who works for the Haitians, and gives him a name, Merle Jackson. However, Lincoln can't just get to him, he needs to draw him out. So Laveau mentions he has women locked up, held hostage in the brothel, who Merle makes a lot of money off of. Lincoln heads to the brothel and frees the girls. He heads back to Laveau, who tells him about the pimps in the area Jackson leans on to make up lost cash. Laveau then tells Lincoln Merle is at the brothel and he ain't too happy. Lincoln meets with Donovan and learns the heroin is being dealt out of a church across the road by a Charlie Kincaid. But of course he's not around, so Lincoln interrogates Charlie's pushers and learns he'll lose money if all the dope is destroyed. So that's what he does. Lincoln interrogates more pushers and learns the enforcers are also dealing around the area and takes them out. Donovan tells Lincoln Charlie is expecting and he's always been about the money, so the whole gangster arc isn't him, but he won't go down without a fight. Lincoln has a shootout with Charlie's guys before recruiting Charlie to the team. Lincoln pays a visit to Cassandra and discovers a man named Jesse held hostage who has ties to Doucette, and tells Lincoln he's laying low at an amusement park because Georgie wants him dead as well. Lincoln heads to the amusement park and fights through Richie's men before finally coming face to face with him.
You can pray on the way up.
When I saw Richie Doucette hanging from that Ferris wheel, I felt a profound sense of disbelief. Nothing like this had ever happened before.
Lincoln returns to Donovan and gives him Burke and Vito for associates. Donovan gives Lincoln the lore behind Burke, saying that he used to run Point Verdun until it was taken from him by Roman the Butcher Barbieri from Sal, and he went along with the bank heist thinking he'd make things square with Sal and he'd have his town back. Lincoln heads across town to meet Burke and asks for help in taking down Marcano. But because of what happened last time, Burke hesitates and starts running his mouth, so Lincoln takes him on a bit of a joyride to let Burke know he's serious. Donovan gives Lincoln the lore behind Vito and says Sal's always hated him because he thought he was a mole for the commission but couldn't do anything because Vito is made, and since the heist, Sal refused to pay him and has been trying to limit his ability to pay Sal what's owed, so the commission will allow him to take care of Vito, but Vito has off-the-record businesses still keeping him afloat luckily. Recently though, Sal's nephew Michael Greco was sent to help Vito run River Road, but Greco decided to make sure Vito has no control over the town so he can have the opportunity to take him out. Lincoln heads to where Vito is and learns he's been taken hostage. Lincoln frees him and asks for his assistance in taking down Marcano. They begin negotiating and come to an agreement that Vito will help if Lincoln brings Greco to him. To go after the Butcher, Lincoln needs to take down his two rackets, starting with the Moonshine racket. He talks to Burke's daughter Nikki and she reveals a man named Carl Bevers runs the distillery, but he keeps his stills elsewhere with a rumored map of where they all are. So Lincoln interrogates bootleggers and finds the hidden stash in a cop bar. He then takes out the enforcers and steals the map before destroying the Moonshine camps, which brings Carl out of hiding and Lincoln assassinates him. Lincoln goes after the second racket, Protection, and speaks to Bear Donnelly, learning a man named Sonny Blue runs things over there, and that one of the boys, Ralph, was caught skimming and is being interrogated on the location of the stash. Lincoln interrogates the loan sharks and destroys the shops that are paying protection money before rescuing Ralph and finally coming face to face with Sonny, where Lincoln executes him. Taking down the two rackets caught the attention of the Butcher, so Lincoln returns to Burke and they prepare a plan to prepare for the Butcher's arrival and his attack. He arrives and Lincoln takes out his man and the butcher before knocking him out. Lincoln goes after Greco but has to take down his 2 rackets first, starting with contraband, speaking to Connie DeMarco and learning Roy Thibodeau runs things now, but the racket isn't doing too good and Greco can't do shit about it except for talking to him and making sure he gets his shit straight if it continues to fall, which is where Lincoln comes in. He takes out the enforcers and robs the warehouse, which scares Roy into a warehouse nearby where Lincoln assassinates him. Lincoln speaks to Jock Blanchard in regards to the second racket, Union Extortion, and learns Andy Toretto runs it, but Greco is making him extort more pay out of the workers to keep or get a work permit. So Lincoln destroys the Union trailers, takes out the enforcers, and causes enough damage to get Toretto's attention, trying to find out who's stopping the money being collected. Lincoln heads to where Toretto is and takes him out. Lincoln meets with Vito where they prepare to assassinate Greco, but Marcano's guys show up to do the job instead, until Greco jumps out the window escaping and getting into a car, prompting Lincoln to get in Vito's car and chase after Greco while avoiding Marcano's reinforcements. Lincoln takes out Greco and Marcano's men before kidnapping Greco, escaping the cops, and heading back to Vito's where Vito finally gets his hands on Greco. During interrogation, Vito and Lincoln learn Sal has a casino in the works being built where he plans to go legit. However, gambling's illegal in New Bordeaux, which is why he's doing what he can to pay off politicians to get the laws changed. In the Marcano family, Georgie and Sal talk when Georgie believes Sal's casino idea is stupid when they could make double the money moving heroin. But Sal doesn't care about the money, not anymore. Georgie quickly fires back though, saying all I've ever heard from you is pay what's goddamn owed. Then Sal quickly fires back saying you think this is the game. It's my fault for not setting you straight, but this ain't no game. This wears you down. I haven't had a good sleep in 43 goddamn years, and don't even get me started on Lucio. Georgie replies saying we got retaliation, no? Yeah, but it didn't bring him back, did it? Sal fires back. Georgie goes silent before Sal continues on trying to humble Georgie, saying you think you're big sitting in that chair? You think you're tough? All it does is paint a giant red bullseye on your damn forehead. But what I'm really scared about is getting a call saying you're dead. That's what really gets me. Sal lays down the plan and says Georgie will run the casino with him before taking over once things have settled, and finding a nice woman, giving Sal some grandkids. But Georgie finds that boring. Sal responds explaining the way of the world now with everyone wanting equality, but that doesn't work with how they operate. The phone then rings in the office with Sal picking up and Uncle Lou on the other end. Sal learns that Lincoln is still alive. Lincoln meets with Burke and finds him drowning in his sorrows, grieving the loss of his son Danny. They talk when Burke admits he was wrong about Lincoln when he showed up thinking he brought rotten luck. Lincoln calls a sit down with the 3 associates, but when they meet each other, they don't get off on the best foot.
You think I forgot what you did? You can blame Marcana all you want, but it was your men who ambushed us.
My men were following orders. We got rules. Not my fucking problem that you people don't understand it.
Yeah, well, I'm about to make it your fucking problem.
What shit is this then? Goddamn. If it ain't the city's favorite pot-licking donkey, Thomas Burke.
The fuck did you just say to me? Put the gun down, Burke.
Lincoln puts his foot down and says if we're gonna take down Marcano, let's chill out on the childish high school drama. Cassandra expresses her distrust for Vito and Burke when Lincoln quickly fires back saying I don't trust any of you either, but I still took down the big dogs to get to where we are now, so either fall in line or there's the door. But if you step out, I will take you down like I will Marcano. They go over the plan, but Burke chimes in and says let's just go to Marcano's house and shoot him. But of course that won't work. Someone else will take over and they'll be back to square one. Lincoln goes through the plan to go after the lieutenants, take their territory, move on to the capos, then Marcano will be alone and isolated, giving them the window of opportunity to finally go after him. Lincoln meets with Donovan and they strategize and prepare a plan to go after the big dogs, with Donovan lining up some concerned citizens to share what they know about them. Lincoln meets with Donovan in downtown where he learns it's run by a man named Tony DiRazio, who is basically Lou Marcano's manager and accountant. Tony lives in the penthouse of the hotel but doesn't leave. Only left one time to take care of business because someone messed up. But to take down Tony, he's got to go after the rackets. First one being the blackmail racket, speaking to Harold Corley and learning Frankie Bernard runs things in it. Lincoln interrogates the couriers, finds the dead drop, and steals the money before taking out his enforcer and heading to the spa to steal the stash, which gets the attention of both Tony and Frankie. Lincoln heads back to the spa and takes care of Frankie. Lincoln goes after the last racket construction, talking to Lenny Davis and learning Jimmy Kavar runs things. So he interrogates the foreman and blows up the construction crane before stealing the money stash and taking out his enforcer, which grabs Kavar's attention, prompting Lincoln to take him out. Lincoln meets with Donovan and it's discovered that Tony assassinated one of his employees before giving one of his henchmen, Dominic, keys to the armored car and to go around the town collecting the money that's owed. Continuing on, saying to deliver the collections at the hotel and gives him the elevator code. Learning this information, Lincoln steals the car and heads to the hotel, getting inside the elevator. Uncle Lou starts freaking out on Tony with all the damage being done, trying to set him straight, but Tony assures him he's got everything under control. Lincoln fights through Tony's men before getting to Tony when he shoots a damn RPG at him. Tony accepts his fate and is thrown out the window. Lincoln escapes the hotel and loses the cops. Lincoln returns to Donovan and they discover Lou Marcano has a judge on payroll to get him to legalize gambling as part of Sal's larger plan to go legit, but they don't know who it is specifically. Not yet anyway. Lincoln meets with Donovan in Barclay Mills and learns Enzo Conti runs the town. However, he learns Enzo isn't too keen on Sal's casino plan and thinks he's gonna screw a lot of people over, which Lincoln sees as an opportunity to flip him. Enzo has two rackets, guns and garbage. Lincoln starts with the guns racket and speaks to Connie DeMarco, learning Pete Santini runs things there. Lincoln steals the gun map and interrogates the train robbers, stealing the money stash before busting up weapons deals, causing enough damage to grab the attention of Pete and become face to face with him, taking him out. Lincoln goes after the last racket garbage, speaking to Maria Bava, learning Paul Simmons or Puppy runs things. Lincoln plants a bomb in the garbage dump and blows it up before interrogating extortionists, taking out the cleaners and stealing the money stash, destroying the garbage barges, doing enough damage to get the attention of Puppy and coming face to face with him, taking care of him. Lincoln returns to Donovan to see him sleeping and decides to have some fun.
Jesus Christ. I'm gonna shot you in the goddamn face.
Lincoln calls Enzo and makes him an offer, giving Lincoln info on who's behind the construction of the casino, and Lincoln protects Enzo from Marcano. Enzo gives a meeting location and they meet. Enzo recognizes him and he begins talking about Sammy and is sad about what happened to him. So he wants to get Sal back as much as Lincoln does and tells him Remy Duval owns the land the building is being constructed on and also runs the construction and all that jazz, which means Marcano can't touch him or there's no casino. He gives Remy's location, but Marcano's sister-in-law Olivia is making him lay low, which makes it hard to get to him easily. Marcano's men show up and they both fight through the hit squad, with Lincoln planting explosives along the quarry so Sal gets nothing, and they reach the garage where Lincoln takes the off-road vehicle and drives off while the quarry explodes. Lincoln loses Marcano's men and drops Enzo off at the hotel. Lincoln returns to Donovan and tells him what Enzo taught him. Both Donovan and Lincoln learn Duval runs the Southern Union in his spare time, which is a white supremacist group. Lincoln mentions Olivia and learns she was an outlier and was married to Sal's brother Lucio until he got, and she took over operations, opening up a PCP lab. Lincoln chooses to go after Duval first, since getting rid of him will shake things up with the casino construction, and Lincoln causing terror will nab the attention of Duval in the process. Lincoln meets with Donovan in Tickfall Harbor and learns Franco or Frank Pagani runs the town, answering to Tommy Marcano, Sal's brother. He also learns he's away in Bermuda, which is really a cover for being in Cuba, where Marcano used to run the old mob casinos. Lincoln expresses confusion and believes there's more to it, but Frank isn't scheduled to come back anytime soon, which is when Lincoln comes in to change that. Pagani runs the auto theft and smuggling rackets. Lincoln starts on the auto theft racket, speaking to Gina Kowalski, learning Jack Jr. Holland runs it. He destroys the boosted car shipment and takes out his pro-car thieves, racking up enough damage to get the attention of Jr., becoming face to face with him before assassinating him. Lincoln meets with Donovan where they set up to assassinate Frank, and they listen in to Tommy and Frank going back and forth, with Tommy demanding Frank to return. Frank flies back with his car, arriving on the Tanager, and Donovan gives Lincoln a tracking device to plant on Frank's car. Lincoln speaks to Pablo Duarte in regards to the second racket smuggling and learns Walter Pops Holland runs things. So Lincoln takes out his enforcers, interrogates the radio operator who drops the name Butterbean, stealing the smuggling main money stash, and finally taking out the main guy running the airdrop operations, causing enough damage to get the attention of Walter before coming face to face with him and taking care of him. Lincoln meets with Donovan, who tells him Frank's back in town and on the move with the tracking signal being active. Lincoln follows the signal to a garage where Frank drives off trying to escape, with Lincoln chasing behind. He eventually gets him and he begs for his life, talking about the family he has, which gets him talking, where Lincoln learns the intent behind the Federal Reserve heist was to also steal the money plates, and not just the money, also learning a counterfeiter named Alvarez is involved, but before he can find out his location, Frank passes away. Lincoln returns to Donovan and connects the dots with the robbery that Sal's intention was never to make peace, even though he gave his word. He always wanted Sammy gone, and Lincoln saying no to Sal's offer was them cleaning up loose ends. Otherwise, Lincoln would have been a pawn in a much bigger plan of Sal's, but Donovan sets him straight and reminds him of what he set out to do originally. Lincoln goes after the French ward, which is run by Lou Marcano, talking to Big Jim McCormick in regards to the drugs racket, and learns Doc Gaston runs it. Lincoln interrogates his pushers, takes out his enforcers, and destroys the resupply boats, causing enough damage to get the attention of Doc Gaston, coming face to face with him and taking him out. The second racket in the French ward was this, and Lincoln speaks to Harold Corley, learning handsome Harry Robert Chow runs it. He interrogates the pimps, learns of some certain VIPs that do things disguised as kinks and takes them out, also taking out his enforcers, doing enough damage to get Harry's attention before coming face to face with him and taking care of him. Lincoln meets with Donovan at his truck and he learns the judge on Lou's payroll is a Cornelius Holden, and Holden scolds Lou for not being paid enough for nearly dying, so Lou takes action to make sure nothing happens to him. Lincoln also learns Holden is the judge on a trial to do with a white man named Hollis Dupree assassinating two black men who came to his home in self-defense, and that taking out the judge would stir up quite a bit of noise, especially on Marcano's end. So Lincoln tails him, witnesses a drug deal going down, and waits till it's safe before pulling the trigger on him. Marcano is pissed at Lou for not being able to keep Holden alive until after the ruling, which puts a roadblock in Sal's plans, until Lou mentions a state senator named Walter Jacobs who they can also bribe to get Sal's work done. They have dirt on him but can't blackmail him too fast, so Lou comes up with a plan to organize a cruise along the bayou, get the liquor flowing, show him a good time, and get that payday talk going. With the boys learning of Lou's plan, Lincoln heads to the coal dumper and plant C4, detonating it once the cruise gets near, causing it to crash and become stationary. Lincoln climbs aboard the ship, fighting through Lou's men, finally getting to him, but before Lincoln can pull the trigger, the ship starts moving, causing the three of them to move. Once the movement stops and Lincoln lines up a shot on Lou, the boat explodes, causing the senator to burn alive and the other two to get blown off the ship. Lincoln wakes up to Lou making a run for it and follows behind him, with Lou eventually getting too tired to continue on, which gives Lincoln the window of opportunity to take care of things.
State Senator Walter Jacobs was killed this evening in a fiery explosion aboard a riverboat. Local businessman Louis Marcano also lost his life, along with dozens of other wealthy donors there to attend a political fundraiser.
Back at the Marcanos, Sal is both pissed and disappointed and blames his son Georgie for not finishing the job on Lincoln, who caused all this mess. Sal starts freaking out because he has no one in politics he can bribe to legalize gambling, until Georgie suggests the governor and they can blackmail him with pictures of him with another chick, but he already paid his debt to Sal, so he doesn't give a shit and it wouldn't be enough anyway. But then, Georgie throws out another suggestion: Leo Galante. Sal instantly shoots it down because just hearing that name makes his skin crawl, and explains the whole reason behind the casino is to get out from under them and become independent. Otherwise they'll want a cut of everything. However, he ends up realizing he has no choice and ends up making a call to Leo Galante. Lincoln goes after Olivia Marcano, Sal's sister-in-law, but takes down the two rackets first, taking on the Southern Union and talking to Jackie Grimaldi, learning that Chester Moreau runs things and actually finances it. Lincoln interrogates the brothers, takes out the enforcers, and only learns of Bel Air supermarket, which is owned by Moreau, and he learns something is going down later tonight at the supermarket. Lincoln heads to the supermarket and waits till night before investigating it and discovers a slave auction going on. Lincoln interrogates the guy doing the auction, who drops info on the other slaves. Lincoln rescues the slaves being trafficked and takes out more enforcers before robbing the coyote, taking out more enforcers and raiding gatherings, causing enough damage to get the attention of Moreau before finally coming face to face with him and taking him out. Lincoln goes after Olivia's second racket, PCP, and speaks to Bear Donnelly regarding it, learning Bobby Bastion runs things. He interrogates the dealers, robs the taxi garage, and takes out the cooks, causing enough damage to get the attention of Bobby, finally coming face to face with him before assassinating him. Lincoln returns to Donovan, cutting his toenails. Donovan catches Remy on wiretap talking to Olivia, airing out his frustration on Lincoln causing damage to the Southern Union racket, and decides he's going to take action and send a message. Olivia tells him how much of a mistake he's making and references the casino, but Remy could care less about the casino. To find more info on Remy, Lincoln finds a deacon and interrogates him, learning he's putting together a hunting party at the lookout point to hunt for Lincoln. Lincoln heads to the lookout point and fights the racist before nailing Remy to the cross. Back at the Meccano office, Sal is freaking out over Duval's death because he didn't name them in the will and the land is going to his nephew Stephen DeGarmo. But Remy amended the will before his death, naming the Marcanos to have the land in his passing. However, it was never signed, which Olivia can pull some strings on since they were business partners. But Sal can't afford a legal battle due to all his money being in the casino until Olivia realizes DeGarmo is coming to town for the funeral, and that'll be their opportunity to arrange a meeting and offer a percentage to persuade him into signing over the land. They hold a wake for Remy and Lincoln infiltrates as a waiter, but Donovan gives him LSD to dose the wine bottles and starts pouring drinks to people. Olivia gives a speech before Lincoln serves Olivia's bodyguards. He takes a small break before making his way to Olivia, passing by people going crazy from the LSD. Olivia begins to suspect something and leaves the area. Lincoln follows behind, getting inside the room Olivia is in, grabbing the gun on the counter and taking out the bodyguards before confronting her on DeGarmo, where she drops his location. DeGarmo is interrogated in the meantime to sign over the land, but Lincoln saves him in time before things get worse. Lincoln takes him to Donovan and he gets out of the city. Back at the Meccano office, Georgie brings in Sant'Angelo and Sal makes a deal with him where Sant'Angelo gives him money to help with legal fees for the lawyers for the land, and Sant'Angelo gets a deal on the streets with no interference whatsoever, and to also get rid of Lincoln. Lincoln goes after Tommy Marcano, taking down his two rackets first, starting with Black Market, where he speaks to Grant Perdue, learning Artie Higgins runs it. He interrogates the hustlers, taking back Grant's truck, taking out the hijackers, and stealing the money stash, causing enough damage to grab the attention of Artie, finally coming face to face with him before taking him out. Lincoln goes after Tommy's second racket, gambling, and speaking to Danny Little, learning Johnny Peralta runs things. He interrogates the runners, takes out the enforcers, and rescues a fighter Peralta has as a hostage on the other side of town in a swamp, causing enough damage to get the attention of Peralta before coming face to face with him and assassinating him. Lincoln returns to Donovan and finds out Alvarez has surfaced and is scared from all the damage Lincoln has been causing, so much so he called for his uncle to rescue him, which he agreed to do. But Alvarez's uncle Zaraga used to be an officer back in Cuba and provided security for Sal's casinos, so they have some history, which is why he told Sal where Alvarez is almost immediately. Which means Lincoln gets a move on and heads towards the lighthouse, fighting through Marcano's men, getting to Alvarez and getting him out while fighting off Marcano's reinforcements, and gets him to Father James to keep him safe. Father James hesitates at first until Lincoln tries convincing him, and he eventually folds, saying he knows a Jesuit in New Mexico and takes him in. Back at the Marcano office, Tommy tells Sal he lost Alvarez before mentioning Lincoln, and Sal loses his mind. Sal reveals the money plates that were stolen in the heist are stored in the gym that Tommy operates and demands him to go down there and protect it. Lincoln meets with an old friend named Alcy and doesn't appreciate him speaking of Sammy and Ellis after what he did to Sammy, but ultimately Lincoln needs him to be recruited into Tommy's boxing gym as he's recruiting black fighters, as also apparently you get to meet Tommy if you beat everyone. Lincoln enters and gets patted down before getting changed in the locker room and heading into his first fight, defeating his first opponent. The next guy comes in, Bobby Ladeau, whom Lincoln defeats, then Gravedigger Vaughn comes in, whom Lincoln also defeats, and ultimately becomes the champion. And as per rumors, once he walked out of the gym, he is met by the presence of Tommy Marcano himself and is ultimately knocked out as expected. Lincoln wakes up inside a room to Tommy pouring gasoline over him, preparing to burn him alive, but Tommy lets the tension build up too much, while Lincoln frays the rope against the gym bar, eventually setting him free and taking down the guy in front of him before flipping the script script and burning Tommy alive as well as the entire gym. Lincoln fights through Marcano's men as he escapes the gym and loses the cops. Before Lincoln can get to Sal, there's one more thing standing in his way: Sant'Angelo. Lincoln drives around the French ward area to draw him out, and once he bites, Lincoln takes him down and reminds him of who he is.
My name is Lincoln Clay,
Before he assassinates him. Lincoln returns to Donovan, who is preparing to get rid of any and all evidence he has on the Marcanos. Donovan plays the audio recorder, and back at the Marcano office, Sal basically accepts his fate, but Georgie refuses to let this be the end and suggests to send men out to find Lincoln, but Sal quickly fires back saying, "They don't care about me anymore. They want me dead more than anything. I'm a massive bullseye waiting to be hit if I step outside." Georgie has a mini crash out in response before Sal tells him to get the men to meet at the casino and take out Lincoln once he shows up. Before Lincoln leaves, he expresses his gratitude to Donovan for everything he's done to help him out. Lincoln heads to the casino and fights through Marcano's men before finally getting to Georgie and letting him know he saw him as a friend but was angry to learn it was all an act, until Georgie comes clean and says it was always about his father before Lincoln finishes the job. Lincoln heads upstairs to meet Sal and they indulge in regular conversation since Sal has accepted his fate and can't do anything from this point. They share a drink together before Sal starts venting and coming clean about how he's been feeling lately, mentioning a nightmare he had about Georgie dying, which scared him shitless. Lincoln also shares a nightmare he had back in Nam, where dark figures come out of the shadows, held him down, tied his hands and muffed his mouth so he couldn't make noise while watching the men around him die. Sal reveals he built the casino with the intention of keeping Georgie safe at all costs, but that didn't go to plan. He also says he's not sorry for what he did and he'd be lying if he was, because he feels no remorse for anything he did. They continue talking before Lincoln finally ends it all and stabs him before kicking him out the window. Lincoln escapes the casino and is met by Leo Galante from the commission, who was sent to investigate the attacks on Marcano. Leo delivers a message that this all ends right here, right now, when Lincoln responds saying, "I got no beef with yous." Pleased with his response, Leo tells Lincoln he's free to run the underworld of New Bordeaux himself and do what he wants, including the selling of dope or heroin, as long as the commission gets 20%. But if he chooses to walk away from the mob life, then this will be their last interaction. Lincoln returns home and meets with Donovan and Father James at the church, letting them know the job is done. Donovan is excited to hear the news, but Father James, not so much. Father James reminds Lincoln that the path of vengeance he went on was selfish, since all it did was create a storm in the city and it's going to be a while before it goes away. Lincoln then responds saying the city belongs to him now. Father James, shocked by his response, reminds him the whole point of the path he went on was to remove him from power, not replace him. But Donovan chimes in and says there's always going to be another Sal Marcano no matter what, because the city is a cesspool. Father James reminds Lincoln of what he said to him when he came back home.
How you want to go to California, leave all this behind, and just start all over? Yeah.
And says it's not too late. Donovan announces his departure before advising Lincoln of the informants he's been working with to get rid of them. Father James gives Lincoln an ultimatum. If he leaves, they can continue their relationship as friends and repair it, but if he stays, he wants nothing to do with Lincoln. Lincoln heads to the plantation house, meeting with his 3 underbosses, and chooses to rule the city of New Bordeaux together. With the main story out of the way, it's time to get into some things that happened and theorize why the things that happened. So for a bit of context, even though Mafia 3 was an open world game, the way they designed the story was in a documentary style format. The documentary was in 2016 and Lincoln's Path of Vengeance was in 1968. But basically, Donovan was asked to testify so they could learn the full story from beginning to end to fill the missing plot holes. Lincoln was basically untouchable as a crime boss, so he didn't exactly rat out Lincoln, contrary to popular belief, but Donovan didn't agree to just tell them what happened and walk away. He agreed to it with an intention. The senator that ran the hearing, Donovan had evidence on him regarding the assassination of JFK, that Marcano was behind it, and the senators were co-conspirators, so once Donovan told them everything and waited for them to say how bad of a man Lincoln was, Donovan quickly flipped the script and reminded him of the sick, vile, and heinous crimes against humanity he committed before pulling the trigger on him. This was explained in the story, but you probably missed it or didn't pay attention to the dialogue. At the beginning of the game, Sammy talks about some troubles he's been having with the Haitians, that they came into the Hollow and started robbing people, taking their stuff before taking money from the Hollow. This line from Sammy is what basically laid the foundation for the beef.
I made a donation to Father James here. Supplied him with food he can hand out to some of our needier family.
And once Lincoln rescues Cassandra and waits for her to arrive, she explains the meaning behind the beef, that he only wanted to help out the needy families when he felt like it, and not because he wanted to help, which rubbed her the wrong way and sent the Haitians to the Hollow to send Sammy a message, it seems like. So throughout the story of Mafia 2 and 3, mentions of the Commission come up. You never get to see them, only hear about it. You get a little tease at the end of Mafia 3 when Leo talks to Lincoln, but overall you don't see anything. But the Commission, which was formed in 1931 by Charles Lucky Luciano, and it served its purpose by overseeing Mafia crime families and settling disputes. In Mafia 2, they weren't talked about a lot, but they had a big rule: no drugs. A couple reasons why, but both Clemente and Falcone broke those rules and went into the narcotics business anyway, which led to their feud and downfall of their respective families. In Mafia 3, however, they're a lot more lenient in what the crime families do now, but at the cost of them having more control on who goes to what family, and they get a cut of everything, 20% to be exact. Which is why Vito was sent to Marcano's family after being exiled from Empire Bay once he assassinated Carlo Falcone, because the Commission controlled that, but Sal didn't like that and began to suspect Vito as a mole, but because Vito was a made man, Sal wasn't able to get rid of him without reason, which pissed him off more, which is the reason why Sal began the construction of a new casino and tried to bribe politicians to change the gambling laws, because 1, he wanted to go legit and independent, being free of the Commission's shackles, 2, protect his family because of the nightmares he's been having and get out of the mob life of crime, and 3, gambling was illegal in the city, hence the attempted briberies. And the Commission found out about the casino plans because Sal had nowhere else to go for help once Lincoln derailed Sal's plans of bribing judges and politicians. By the end of it, the Commission didn't care Sal was dead, even though they wanted Lincoln dead. They were willing to look the other way as long as Lincoln paid his cut for whatever he decided to do. In short, no. It slowly unravels throughout the story, but at the beginning, Sammy and Sal had known each other prior to the Haitians' beef, and Sammy seemed to be in debt before the robberies, causing even more debt to stack to Sal. And with Sammy determined to make ends meet however possible, once Sal learned Lincoln was back, he called a meeting and lost trust in Sammy to pay back the debt, so he tried to offer out Sammy's position of power to Lincoln, but Lincoln of course declined because he respects Sammy too much for that, which pissed Sal off, but he didn't let it affect his main plan all too much, because he knew what he was going to do after Lincoln said no, but he needed the foundation of his larger plan to go legit to get started first, which is why he made sure Lincoln still participated in the heist of the Federal Reserve and was given his word by Sal that the debt would be paid in full and no more drama would happen from that point on if the heist was to be successful. But he also left out the part where he also wanted the money plates to launder money through the casino, so he never cared in the first place. He just had him doing his dirty work for him and assassinated the family to tie up loose ends, but obviously failed on Lincoln and it all backfired on them in the end. Man, what a deep dive. This was a lot of fun. If you have any more questions or theories about the game that I didn't mention in the video, please put it in the comments. I love talking about these things. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video and you're new here, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new for more content like this, and I will see you legends in the next one. Peace.